Once upon a time, on a dusty, lonely road that wound its way between Jerusalem and Jericho, a man lay groaning by the wayside. He had been attacked by robbers, who stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. The sun beat down mercilessly, and his hope was beginning to fade. Soon the sound of footsteps approached. It was a priest, a man of God, walking along the same road. When he saw the injured man, he paused for a moment, his brow furrowed. But he seemed to be in a hurry, perhaps on his way to an important duty at the temple. He crossed to the other side of the road and continued on his journey, his footsteps fading into the distance. The injured man let out a faint sigh of despair. A little while later, another person came along. This was a Levite, who also served in the temple. He, too, saw the man lying in the dust. He walked over, looked at the poor man's wounds, and shook his head sadly. But then, just like the priest, he crossed over to the other side and hurried on his way. It seemed no one was willing to help. The road fell silent again, broken only by the man's pained breathing. Then, a new sound filled the air, the gentle clip-clop of a small donkey. A young child, a traveler from a land called Samaria, was riding the donkey. The child saw the man lying on the ground, his clothes torn and stained. The child's eyes widened with concern. He immediately guided his donkey to a halt beside the injured traveler. The child looked at the man's wounds and felt a pang of fear. The man was a stranger, and the road was known to be dangerous. What if the robbers were still hiding nearby? The child's heart began to beat a little faster. He was just a small child. What could he possibly do? He hesitated, clutching the reins of his donkey, feeling very small and alone on that long, empty road. But as he stood there, a powerful thought came to his mind. He remembered the teachings of Jesus, who said to love your neighbor as yourself. He remembered the stories of kindness and compassion, of helping those in need without asking who they were or where they came from. The child looked at the suffering man again, and the fear in his heart began to be replaced by a feeling of deep empathy and love. This man was his neighbor, and he was hurting. The child knew he couldn't just walk away. He closed his eyes for a moment and whispered a little prayer. "Dear God," he said softly, "please help me be kind. Give me the strength and wisdom to help this man." When he opened his eyes, he felt a new sense of purpose. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet courage. He gently slid off his donkey and approached the man. First, he took out his own water flask and carefully poured some cool water onto a cloth. He dabbed the man's dry, cracked lips, and the man drank greedily, a flicker of life returning to his eyes. The child then took out some oil and wine he had for his journey. He gently cleaned the man's wounds with the wine, which acted as a disinfectant, and then soothed them with the soft oil. He tore strips from his own clean cloak to use as bandages, carefully wrapping the man's injuries to protect them. Lifting the man was the hardest part. The child was small, and the man was heavy. But with great effort and determination, he managed to help the injured traveler onto the back of his little donkey. The child then took the reins and began to walk slowly and carefully along the road, leading the donkey toward the nearest town. He walked beside the donkey, making sure the man was as comfortable as possible, his own journey forgotten in his mission to save this stranger. They traveled for what felt like a long time until they finally saw the lights of an inn ahead. The child led the donkey to the entrance and called for the innkeeper. The innkeeper came out, his eyes widening at the sight of the injured man. The child explained what had happened, and together they carefully helped the man down from the donkey and carried him inside to a warm bed. The child stayed with the man through the night, making sure he was comfortable. The next morning, before he had to continue his own journey, he went to the innkeeper. He took out 2 silver coins, all the money he had, and gave them to the innkeeper. "Please," the child said, "take care of him. Whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I return." The innkeeper was touched by the child's incredible generosity and promised to look after the man until he was well. As the child prepared to leave, the injured man was awake. He was weak, but his eyes were clear. He looked at the child, and tears of gratitude streamed down his face. He couldn't speak much, but his expression said everything. He was alive because of this kind-hearted child, a stranger who had shown him more compassion than his own countrymen. As the child traveled on, his heart was full. He had learned a profound lesson that day on the road to Jericho. A neighbor isn't just someone who lives next door or someone who looks and thinks like you. A neighbor is anyone who is hurting, anyone in need of help. True kindness doesn't ask questions. It simply acts with love and compassion. This story reminds us that we are all called to be like that kind child. Jesus is the ultimate Good Samaritan for us, healing our deepest wounds. He calls us to show that same love to others. So let's look around us. Let's be the one who stops, who cares, and who shows kindness to everyone, especially those who are overlooked. In doing so, we not only help others, but also experience the hope and mercy of God in our own lives. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more uplifting content. See you next time.